My grandfather was born in 1952, and he was in his teen years through the 60s, and so he experienced the civil rights movement. He grew up when segregation was a huge part of everyday life, and so he was taught that because he was white, he was right, and that other people around him were not right because they weren't white. And so, growing up, he believed some things were right that nowadays we think of as wrong. I'm sure at least one other person in this class has a similar story to mine. Our generation has been told numerous times that something that we do or say is not right because it wasn't done like that in the past. We all have a new zeitgeist or specific way we do things from generation to generation. The thing that is what we think is right or wrong is totally different from what the last generation will think and what the new generation after us will think. Right, in terms of right, I defined it as accordance with what is good, proper, or just. I found that on dictionary.com, and the definition for wrong is not correct in action, judgment, opinion, or method, also from dictionary.com. This is not necessarily a bad thing because disagreements really create uniqueness for people and from person to person, and as generations pass, we start to better ourselves. We learn from the past mistakes that were made. There will always be something that everyone disagrees about, but these subjects have moved from being what was wrong to now things that we see as right or just, such as interracial marriages or couples, homosexuality, and even living together before marriage. Interracial couples have been something not really rare nowadays. We see interracial couples all the time. Our generation, college students see this all the time, or maybe are even in interracial marriages or relationships. I found in a 2017 article from dailyhistory.org that in 1967, the prohibition against interracial marriages was deemed unconstitutional. For a majority of our grandparents were alive during this time and may still see that as wrong, but as we grow and as time passes, we see that things that were wrong before may have been right now. And so some of them may have created an opinion from that and shaped other people around them, making them feel like it was still wrong, whereas now it is viewed as right. In a blog called What is Behind the Rise of Interracial Marriages in the U.S. by Mona Chalabi, I found that now about 17% of all marriages are interracial, as opposed to 3% in 1967 when it was legalized. Interracial marriage is more common now, and it has been normalized so that we now view it as something right, whereas before it was seen as wrong. Overall, interracial marriages is more positively looked upon in this generation compared to other generations before. Something else that we've come across, still kind of a controversial topic, is homosexuality. Though we all still have different views on homosexuality, this has become more normalized for the generations coming and not fully seen as wrong. Hatzenbuehler did research over homosexuality during the time of the Holocaust and how people were treated if they were homosexual, and they found that there wasn't a lot of research done about memories and what had happened and how the accounts of how they were treated like they were a crime, or the collective memory of what all happened during that time period to homosexual people. The topic of homosexuality is still being talked about and is viewed as both right and wrong in the current time by many different people. If it is either wrong or right, it is still a topic that needs to be talked about and a lot. But it seems like as generations go on, we see it more as not as wrong as we saw it before, like generations before us did. Aside from the mixed reactions on homosexuality, today there have been studies done by Nork at the University of Chicago over the acceptance of homosexuals over the past 40 years. And the questions were asked about if homosexuals should be able to adopt children or vote, and their approval ratings have gone to about 60 to 80%, saying that homosexuals should have these basic rights that everyone else has in life. I would like, something else that we viewed in the past was viewed as wrong is living together before marriage, and a lot of people nowadays are actually doing this. When looking for research on cohabitation, I found an article by Baumgartner called "Cohabitation, Good or Bad?" And it says that 60% of people live together before marriage now, and it's been seen more in a positive light. This was actually one of the topics that I was thinking of doing a persuasive essay about, because I believe that there's a lot of good that can come from this. And more than half the people that are getting married today are living together before they are married. So I would assume that now it has more of a positive lighting instead of how it had a negative light over it in the past. Susan Cinceo in late 2019 found that in the ages of 25 to 34, about 15% of people live together without being married, which is a 3% increase from the last decade. And so as our generation is growing, we see that more people are living together before they're married because they're viewing it not as wrong as it was viewed back in like the 70s or the 60s, when people weren't living together until they were married, and marriage was the first step and then living together was the second. And so we see that things are changing, people are changing. As the generations go on, one generation will see something as wrong and the next generation will see it as right. And so over the years, time progresses and new people are born and views are changed, and we form our new opinions, creating a new world and a new right or a new wrong. And a lot of these topics, such as homosexuality, living together before marriage, and interracial couples, are being normalized and being seen as not the right thing to do, but as right, not as wrong things that we should do. Thank you.